Hi, welcome to this preview video for a brand new game that is currently on Kickstarter, which is called Hard City. Hard City is a semi-cooperative strategy game in a new retro setting, think about 80s. During this scenario-driven gameplay, one player takes the role of the evil mastermind Dr. Zero, while all the other players become brave officers of the Hard City Police Department with a solo aim to disrupt the wicked plans of Dr. Evil. So let's see who stars in Hard City. First of all, we have the officers. These are very brave men and women of the Hard City Police Department, and they are the last hope for saving the city and its inhabitants from obviously mutant invasion. In order to succeed, they will have to cooperate and wisely use their skills as well as resources. Officers are the characters whose roles are taken by some of the players in the game. Each officer activates once per round, has his own turn, and then performs actions allowed by an action point selection system. When an officer receives damage, his or her health point is lowered. When an officer's health point goes down to 0, he is eliminated until the end of the until the beginning of the next round. So we have a selection of 4 officers to begin with. These are really nice minis that they come with the game. Look at the detail. They're very nice, highly detailed, extremely well done. Very cool miniatures. And these are the 4 basic characters that come in the game. This is Mr. Hammer, and the last one is Mr. Johnson. Very nice detail, excellent minis, and these are only prototypes to begin with. And yes, you guessed right, these are donuts. For using the action point selection system, the officers expend donuts as they do their actions. Each officer has a specific character, plays a specific character, where you have a special ability depicted here. The health track, which starts from usually 6, but it could be different depending on the character, if someone is very strong or not, and it goes down all the way to 0 when you're taking damage. A special ability, the name of the star / cop who plays in Hard City, and the markers of the donuts, which are used for the action selection point system. Last but not least, you have these cards, which are upgrades that you get once you manage to perform specific things in the game. But we'll get back to the details of the gameplay in a bit. So these are the officers of Hard City. Next we have Dr. Zero. Dr. Zero is a former boss of the Great Zero Corporation, one of the most influential companies in the area. Now he has become evil, and he is the evil mastermind attempting to take over Hard City, and then, why not, the whole world. He sends terrifying mutant minions to the streets, creating chaos, and one player always is Dr. Zero in the game. He takes his turn after each officer's turn, and he may play an instant card from his hand and then take one action. So he controls the mutants, and his sole purpose is to create chaos and achieve the goal of the specific scenario that we're playing. Then we have the mutants. They are citizens of Hard City who were very unlucky to be exposed to Dr. Zero's deadly mutagen. They are his obedient slaves, and they are controlled by telepathic neurotransmitter. Mutants may move up to 2 spaces on the board, and 1 damage is dealt to a mutant, and then he gets stunned, meaning that when a mutant is damaged, he gets stunned and he gets dropped down. 2 damage points will get him killed and out of the game board. So special mutants such as the mutated rats and the mutant soldiers have special rules described on their sheet, and don't forget about Fubar, which you can see on the top left of the scene right now, and he's a specific, very ugly, very difficult to deal with mutant that always is an asset for Dr. Zero and comes down under specific situation on the game board. Last but not least, the civilians. Civilian appears in some episodes. They are terrifying people running up and down the city streets, while Dr. Zero is spreading chaos with his mutant while they attack him. A civilian may only change his or her space on the board if he is escorted by an officer, or as a result of a special rule, or a chaos card. Each civilian only has 1 hit point. if a civilian gets at least 1 damage, he or she gets killed, which means that the token is removed from the board. So as mentioned earlier, this game is scenario based. You get to start with 5 scenarios, and each of them can be played differently every time due to the different setup that you get at the beginning of the scenario, so you get lots and lots of replayability. So what you get, for example, with the first scenario is something like that. Let me show you. So you have the scenario C that goes next to the player board, where, for example, in this case we have mayhem on the streets, where you have the situation described on the scenario, special rules on the right, the spawning zone, which is the green for Dr. Zero, and then you get specific victory conditions, 1 VP for killing 10 mutants, and 1 VP for an evacuated civilian for the officers. This is the order side, and Chaos gets 1 VP for killing a civilian or for reducing an officer to 0 health point. Then you get the tokens you need for this specific scenario, and you do the setup depending on the card that you drew, so you follow what is on the scenario, and then you're ready to start. So for the game setup, what you do is you choose the episode you want to play, you decide which player is going to become Dr. Zero, and the remaining players will be the officers, the police officers that is. You shuffle the Chaos deck and Event deck separately, and you place these decks near the player controlling Dr. Zero. Let me show you how the Chaos deck looks like. It has this backing. It's the cards that are used from the Dr. Zero to control his mutant and play his part from his side of view. So he does all his actions, most of the actions, with this player deck, which is quite useful for him. And then you also have the Event deck, which is this one, which is used for spawning each round different crates for the officers and different civilians. And it's also used for at the beginning of the round for setting up. So these are the 2 decks that go with Dr. Zero. Then you take an episode sheet and you unfold the appropriate game boards. Here we have 2. These are 2-sided, so you can see this is one, you see, and it's 2-sided, it's folded, and then you have one more, so you have loads and loads of replayability, not only for the scenarios that are already in the game. You can create your own, and there are many more to come for sure. But this is a cool thing. This is the back of the game board, the box, and it is used as a 3D element, so you can put it on the side and you have an elevated board to be used in your games. This is very, very cool. I wish companies were doing this much more, and it's a great idea from Hexy Studio. So what you do then is you draw a card from the Event deck. For example, let's say we drew this, and depending on the card you drew, the number on the Event card determines which grid you're going to use. Then shuffle the Event card back into the deck, and you take the corresponding cutscene opening and you place it near the officers. We're going to come back with a cutscene mechanism, which is a very cool idea and gives this cinematic feeling to the game. You shuffle all cutscenes except the openings, which they are available for the chosen episode, and you place them near the board face down. So you have this deck with cutscenes here. Let me show you how they look like. Lots and lots of cutscenes that you make a face down draw pile, but you always start with the opening, which is called 911. You also get this marker that you're going to use when you activate this specific action from the officer's point of view. But while you play the game, what happens is they unfold and they create a story like a film strip, which is actually very cool. And when you get to do this action, you put this marker right there. Very cool idea, great mechanism. Next thing we do is we take these equipment cards. This is the equipment deck. You have lots and lots of equipment cards. You get to unlock more with the campaign, if I'm not mistaken. So these are what the officers get to find, to explore, when they open these crates from the various places on the map. So these crates are located on the event scene, and they are positioned every time from the setup of the round. Officers can go there, explore them, and draw a card from the equipment deck, so they can use it for becoming stronger and getting better with their equipment. Next, what you do is you place the Order, Chaos and Extermination marker on the corresponding spaces on the victory track. So this is the victory track. On the bottom we have the Chaos. So what they're trying to do in most of the scenarios is create Chaos to go up to 7 so the evil side will win. Respectively, the officers are getting points while they perform specific scenario things, and they go up to 7, and when they do that they win themselves. And this is the kill meter for the mutants. When the officers kill mutants, they move this track down this 1 to 10 track, and they get bonuses when or VPs for their side when they reach 10 respectively. Now, depending on the number of players, the players who control the officers choose which officers they want to take into the game. One player always is Dr. Zero, and all the remaining players are police officers. In a 2-player game, one player is Dr. Zero and the other control 4 officers. In a 3-player game, one player is Dr. Zero and the other players control 2 officers each. And in a 4 and 5-player game, one player is Dr. Zero and the other players control 1 officer each. Only 3 officers take part in a 4-player game though. The players controlling the officers choose their characters and take the appropriate officer sets, miniatures, officer sheets, health point and action point markers, skill cards, and then they set it up near their player area. You place health point marker and 5 action point markers on the corresponding spaces on each officer's sheet, and officers start their game with a maximum health point always. Then you shuffle each of the officers' skill card decks separately and you place them next to their respective officer game board. Then you place all the tokens next to the game board and you're ready to go. Okay, so let's see the game overview. Hard City, as mentioned before, is a scenario-based game where the scenarios are called episodes. The episode you have chosen determines much of the gameplay. It tells you what are the goals for both sides of the conflict and how to set up the board and what special abilities and rules are available. However, the general structure of the game and the round sequence are always the same, and it goes like that. The game is divided into several subsequent rounds. First of all, we have the event phase in each round, and then we have the action phase. Event phase is consisted of officers restoring action points, so they take back their donuts, up to 5 most of the cases, to the maximum. Then they follow the instructions on the episode sheet and they apply any special rules presented there. They may differ significantly depending on the episode that it's been played. You get to follow the specific rules of the episode. Then you draw one cutscene and place it adjacent to the bottom of the previous cutscene, or the opening, if this is the first round of the game, and then you read the text and get to understand what you have the potential to do as an action as well. Last but not least, Dr. Zero draws 4 chaos cards in this setup here. In general, Dr. Zero draws that many chaos cards as there are players in the game. In general, Dr. Zero draws that many chaos cards as there are officers in the game. Then, after the event phase, we have the action phase. After the event phase, the officers and Dr. Zero take their turns alternatively until Dr. Zero takes a turn after the last officer has been activated and played by the players. During each officer's turn, only one officer is activated, but the players can discuss between them what is the best strategy to follow, obviously since this is a cooperative game, and decide what is the best plan to attack Dr. Zero's evil ways. So, after each officer gets his turn, then Dr. Zero is activated, he plays a turn, and then it's the next officer's turn. A few words about cutscenes. Cutscenes are unique one-use only actions that officers can perform if they meet the requirements on the given cutscene. The players controlling the officer should always collectively decide if they want to use what the cutscene offers to them or not. And when a new cutscene is drawn from the pile, is placed on the table, you lay it down one place beneath the previous one. Together they will create a sequence of scenes like a film strip more or less. When the officers meet the requirements of a cutscene and decide to use it, they move the clapper marker onto it to depict that they are activating and using the cutscene action, specific action. The cutscene cannot be used for a second time, neither can all the previous ones be used even if they were not used before. There can be a total of 5 cutscenes on the table during the single episode, including an opening, and after the 5th cutscene has been placed on the table, you do not draw any more in the following event phases. So let me read you the first cutscene, which is the opening call 911, which is always the first one. You place the police car on any space on the edge of the board and move it in a straight line up to 6 spaces. You cannot drive through spaces with a crashed car, barrels or civilians. All mutants on the space you have moved through are killed. Then place the officers on any spaces adjacent to the police car sides, which means thematically that they open the doors and come out of the car. So let me demonstrate this example, because this is always happening at the beginning of each game. So you decide which side the police car is entering the game board. You drive up to 6 spaces in a straight line. If you cross any mutant, he's getting killed and out of the game, and then you stop. Out of the car, you get in the adjacent spaces, the doors open and all the officers come out and the game is ready to begin. Then it's the officer's turn. In a single turn, the chosen officer is activated and may take any number of available actions until he has no action points left. When spending action points, take the appropriate number of action point markers off the officer game board and mark how many there are still left by letting them on. So what you do is you expend these tokens, you perform an action, you perform another action, etc. until you decide to stop or you have no more donuts left to continue making actions. This is always the case depending on who is the active officer, and when you have a reset for the round, you take them back and you're ready to go for the next round. So let's see what these actions do for you. So one of the main things you can do, and you do it most of the time, is movement. For 1 action point, the officer spends 1 action point and moves by 1 or 2 spaces, also counting diagonally, and the officer can move through spaces with other officers or civilians. He or she cannot move through spaces with obstacles, components which fully occupy some spaces like the abandoned car, etc., or even the police car which enters the game. The officer can also move onto in a space of a mutant or out of a space of a mutant, but when the officer leaves a space with any number of mutants which are not stunned, dropped down, that means he or she loses 1 health point regardless of the number of mutants on space. So for example, this guy here, he can spend 1 action point to move like that, or 2 action point to do 1, 2, move even diagonally, or you can even go through there, 1, 2, but you take 1 damage because this guy was not stunned when you were leaving this space. Another thing you can do, obviously, is you can escort civilians. This is a free action. Some episodes feature civilians as an important element of the gameplay. Civilians do not move on their own, but they are waiting for the officers to securely get them out of the trouble and the danger, so they are only following the officer's instructions. This doesn't cost action points, it's a free action, but they always need to be escorted by officers. So for example, if you need to take this civilian with you, this guy can move here, 1 and 2, take it with him and move to the next space. This is a free action to take with you a civilian or drop him off on the way. A word about obstacles. We said we cannot move through cars. For example, I cannot go like that. This is a forbidden obstacle for me, or even like that. So if I need to go on the other side and support the other officers, I need to go around to reach the other side of the car. So another action which is also free is opening crates and boxes. During the game, officers may get extra equipment thanks to police crates and street boxes which are placed on the board and may be opened before, during or after movement. In order to open a police crate or street box and take the token off the board, an officer must be on the same space as the crate or box, and if an officer moves by 1 space and enters a space with it, he or she may open the crate and then take a card and then continue the movement. So opening a crate box does not cost action points, keep that in mind, and after opening the box you need to take the token off the board and pick up an equipment card. For example, for 1 action point this officer can move here, and with a free action she can open this crate, so she gets to draw 1 card from this equipment deck and gets, for example, this skateboard. These are cards that this allows them to move, for example, 4 spaces when they use the skateboard. You get different equipment that do different stuff. Heal 1 health point and regain 3 action point, donuts and coffee. There are a lot of donuts in this game. Knight Rider, move any car up to 1 space, all mutants of the space are killed. You use the key lock. Megaphone, move up to 2 spaces and the chosen civilian or officer, so you dictate them where to go with a megaphone. So there are a lot of things that these equipment cards do and are very useful, so crates are always something to keep an eye for. Next thing you can do for 1 action point is shooting. Perform an attack with shooting. If an officer is on a space with no mutants, which are not stunned, he or she may take a shot. The officer may choose any space with mutants, but with no civilians or officers, and not the space he or she is currently in. So this guy needs to be on his own, and he should not have any mutants in the same space, because he is taking care of this mutant, and in theory he cannot shoot out of the position he's in. So what he does is he expends one action point and he performs a shot attack. Any space on the board that meets these requirements may be targeted. The line of sight is not blocked by miniatures or terrain elements, unless stated otherwise on the specific episode, of course. Then the officer rolls 2 attack dice at once, unless other rules dictate something different, and the results on the dice determine the outcome of the attack. These are the dice of the game. These are prototype, keep in mind, so there you have stickers. These are going to be custom specific dice in the normal production copy. So you roll these dice and you perform the result of the outcome. So a single wound stuns a mutant. For example, this is an attack, a successful attack, and you have the various other sides of the dice. Okay, so for example, if you roll this, you only performed 1 hit. 1 hit is not going to get the mutant killed. What it does, it stuns the mutant. So you knock the miniature over like that. The mutant cannot do anything until it regains consciousness, while dealing 2 damage to a mutant or a damage to a stunned mutant means that the mutant is killed and the miniature is taken off the board. So if again another officer rolls another hit on an attack, then he kills this mutant, or if this officer rolled directly 2 hits, he again kills the mutant instantly and gets it out of the board. The next thing you have is an aimed shot for 2 action points. Aimed shot is not considered a shooting attack action, but is similar to it. You apply all the requirements of a regular shot, but you don't roll any dice. You deal 2 damage to a single mutant on the targeted space instead, but the cost is 2 action points to have a success. Next thing you do is you have a close combat. For 1 action point, if an officer is on the same space as a mutant, which is not stunned, he or she has 2 options. The officer may either leave the space and lose 1 health point, or attack the mutant on this space. Close combat attacks may be performed on any space with the officer and at least 1 mutant, even if other officers or civilians are on it. In a close combat attack, the officer only rolls 1 die. As a result of such an attack, one can only stun mutants, they cannot kill them, so they can only stun them and drop them down. A word about the attack dice, we've seen them before. Besides the hits, you also have this icon here. So each attack die has several possible results on it. These are included damage of 1 or 2, blank or no effect, and an exclamation. During the game you will be using a different number of attack dice depending on the type of attack, and equipment used for the character is performing the attack, so you get to do different things depending on the equipment you also carry with you. So giving equipment costs also 1 action point. If there are 2 or more officers on the same space, the active officer may spend 1 action point to give his or her equipment to another officer in the space. There is no limit on the amount of equipment an officer can carry. So this position is ideal because for 1 action point, the 1 officer can pass this equipment card to the next officer, so they will be more strong when they have to deal with mutants. Using equipment also costs 1 action point. Officers can use equipment, for example, like the card we've seen before, by spending 1 action point, that is taking a donut off the personal game board. They follow the instructions on the equipment card, and after resolving this action, you discard the card. So this card is only 1-time use. You have to spend an action to activate it, perform what is depicted on the text portion of the card, and then you get it out of the game. Using skills, each officer has a starting skill printed on the officer sheet, but during the game officers may also learn new skills and be able to be more effective during gameplay. In some cases, using a skill may require spending action points. The rules are explained on the particular skill card, so you have to quickly and easily follow what's on the text of the card, and then you get to apply the effect of the skill. The skill cards, obviously each officer has his or her own deck of cards with unique skills. In order to get new skills, the officer must kill a total of 10 mutants. Immediately after, what happens is you draw 2 cards from your skill deck, like that. You read the text and you decide which one is best for you and your strategy. Then you choose one and you discard the other one. Each officer gains 1 skill. You place each chosen card next to the respective officer sheet and you shuffle all the cards back to the appropriate skill decks. Officers can immediately apply their skills right away. The number of mutants killed is marked by where we've seen before the victory track, and after a mutant is killed, you move the extermination marker 1 space towards to the front. After 10 mutants have been killed, you move the extermination marker back to 0, and the officers get 1 more skill during the game. So again, you can have various skills, not only 1, but you need to each time be able to kill 10 mutants and get to draw 1 skill card from your deck. So after a single officer finishes his or her turn, Dr. Zero acts. He takes actions according to a different set of rules than the officers, and he uses a special deck of cards. At the beginning of each round, Dr. Zero draws as many Chaos cards as there are officers taking part in the game, 3 or 4 that is, and then uses them to take turns respectively. So remember, Dr. Zero doesn't activate after all players have played, you activate Dr. Zero each time after each officer had a turn. So Chaos cards. The Chaos deck contains 3 types of cards. These are instant cards. Each round before taking any action, Dr. Zero may play 1 such card. Action cards, which may be played instead of using the basic actions, apply the text on the card and then do not use the symbols that they are at the bottom of the card, the green text, the green area symbols that is. Then the next thing is the reaction cards, which may only be played at the moment specified on the card. For example, Bite may only be played after an officer has rolled an exclamation in a close combat attack. Dr. Zero draws a Chaos card and then applies the reaction card. Such a card is this one, the one we just described. This is the Bite. It says that it's a reaction card. So if you play it for the card, you ignore what it's there. You can only play it when the specific case is described on the card, like we've seen before. And this is not part of the normal turn. But the instant, you can only play 1 instant card before you start playing, and you apply the text again on the card. Here it says, choose any civilian or officer that is not on a space with a mutant. You can move the civilian by 2 spaces or the officer by 1 space. But the majority of the cards are the action cards, like this one. So here it says instant. No, this is an instant. Again, let me show you another instant. An action. This is an action card. Mutant Rage. So you can attack twice with a mutant, afterwards stun the mutant. This is a main typical action card. Again, you ignore the bottom part with the symbols, you only apply the text in this case. So you can see that each card has the name of the card, that is depicted here on the top. Then you have the type of the card. You can always look for the main type of the card here with bold. Then you have the effect in text, and then you have the basic actions here. So the basic actions. Each Chaos card has 3 symbols and values at the bottom. These are the number of new mutants spawned, the number of movement, and the number of mutants attacks. While taking an action, Dr. Zero either plays an action card and applies its text for the effect, or plays any card and chooses 2 of the 3 basic actions at the bottom, performing them as he sees fit, and he may do in any order. So the first icon, which stands for spawn mutants, it's this one. If Dr. Zero chooses this action, he may place as many new mutants in his spawn zone, specified on the episode sheet that we've seen at the beginning of this video, as the number on the card says. Mutants may be spawned on any space with no obstacles, and mutants may even be spawned on spaces with civilians, officers or other mutants, but you cannot spawn 2 or more mutants on the same space in a single turn. Then, if you have cases where you spawn special mutants, if special mutants like mutant rats or mutant soldiers are available in the episode, Dr. Zero can place them on the board as normal, provided that the number does not exceed the number allowed by the episode. The number determines how many special mutants of this specific type can be on the board at once. If they are removed from the board, they can be respawned obviously again. The second symbol, which is this one with the foot, is about move mutants. Dr. Zero moves as many mutants as the number on the card says. Each mutant may be moved up to 2 spaces, also diagonally. A single mutant cannot be moved twice in the same turn, and instead of moving one mutant, Dr. Zero may choose a stunned mutant that he will regain consciousness. Remember when we dropped down the figure of a miniature of a mutant? If you want to make it active again, you spend one of the points there. The last thing you can do is you can attack with mutants. This is the last symbol here with a claw. This is an attack may only be performed by a mutant on a space with a civilian and or an officer. A mutant deals 1 damage per space that is his on. So the player controlling the officers decide whether the damage goes to an officer or a civilian on his space and to which one, if there are more than one. And if the damage is dealt to the officer, he or she loses 1 health point by bringing the marker down on the respective officer game board. If the damage is dealt to a civilian, he or she is getting killed and the token is immediately removed from the board. A single mutant may only attack himself once per turn. Remember that if officers are eliminated, at the beginning of the game each officer has a maximum number hit of points marked on his game board. If during the game the number of health points goes down to 0, the officer is knocked down and eliminated from the game until the end of the current round. Knock the miniature over and leave it on its space as is. Nobody and nothing can affect the eliminated officer. Such an officer returns to play at the beginning of the next round. Bring the miniature back up to its upright position, and a single officer may be eliminated more than once during the game. So I think we have seen now most of the things that you can do with the action cards, but keep in mind that with those symbols, if you play them for the bottom part with the symbols, you can only pick 2 out of 3. You cannot do all 3 of them. And it's the most important which 3 are going to be used depending on the situation that Dr. Evil is currently now. Fubar is a special mutant that can be spawned using standard rules, but with one exception. He can only be placed on the board once per episode. If he's killed, he is out of the game and Dr. Zero cannot respawn him again. Fubar spawns with 3 action points and the number of health points equal to the current number of VPs scored by the officer. Dr. Zero can activate him once per round as an action instead of taking his normal action, but he can still play an instant card first. This mutant has health point and action point, as you can see at the bottom of his player board. After he has been killed, you move the extermination token by 3 spaces. When Dr. Zero decides to activate him for 1 action point, he can move by 1 space or attack an adjacent space or the space where he is located. He can't be stunned because he's huge, obviously. An officer can perform close combat attacks against him. You subtract 1 damage from each attack that targets or affects the space with Fubar. So this is like the big guy, the big bad guy that you can see. It has a really cool looking mini. This is a prototype again, so keep in mind that. But still, this is a definition of a mutant. He looks very gross and very big and angry. There you go. And he has his special abilities here and his special game board as well. So the game ends obviously when the exact winning conditions are met, which are described on the episode sheet, and game usually ends when either of the sides reach 7 victory points, either chaos or order. But the rules of earning these points may differ from each episode to the next. So one last thing I want to show you is the variety of the scenarios of the episodes that you have in the game, but on top of that you add the different setup that you get from the the beginning of the game, so you have lots and lots of replayability that comes right away out of the box. So this is the first scenario, Mayhem on the Streets. You see it has the special rules here, the spawning zone, the special card, victory conditions for each side, and the setup. And then you have in cinematic way the second episode, Mutant Heist, different setup, different rules, different spawn zone, different victory conditions. Third episode, Toxic Revenge, more rules, more tokens, even more stuff to do, different setup, look how big the game board goes, the different spawn zones, this is very interesting, and the different scenarios, ways to set up the game board for the scenario in the game. Number 4 is Bloody Sunrise. This is a very cool art actually, it looks like an 80s cop movie for sure. Again, special rules, different setup, and different victory conditions. And the last one is 0 Hour. Of course, this is the most difficult episode, the one at the end. Lots and lots of tokens, switches and stuff. Big game board. Keep in mind that you can use the back of the game board for most of your setups as well. And all these different scenarios. So lots and lots of things to do and different ways to set up the game, which provides a fantastic amount of replayability. So there you have it. This is Hard City, a brand new game that's currently on Kickstarter and asks for your support. This is a very funny and unique take on the 80 Cops movie theme. It has excellent and easy gameplay, very simple rules to follow, a lot of variability and a lot of different ways to play the game depending on the scenario. It feels like you're part of some cheesy Cops 80s movie, which is very fun, a lot of humor. The production, obviously, this is a prototype, but you're gonna get the amazing production of Hexy Studios, like we've seen in other games. This is a great company, does only the best out there. I had the chance to play and review Starscraper's Cave-In, and this is no exception. So if they do exactly the same recipe, rest assured that this game is going to be awesome for sure. The minis are very, very unique, very detailed. I heard that they also give a huge police car like that, which is a 3D plastic miniature for all backers in their Kickstarter campaign, which is really great. I love this guy. This is amazing. I don't know who thought of the design of this mini, but he's awesome, really. The minis have character, the player boards have character, even the action markers are donuts, but they are beaten. Great amount of detail. The theme matches the game exceptionally well. The components are great, a lot of things and a lot of gameplay packed in this game box. I really enjoyed my time playing Hard City. Looking forward to get this funded so we can have the final copy and perform our video on the final copy as well. Great game, only good things from me. 2 thumbs up. Hope you enjoyed this video. Till next time, this was Hard City.